Hi guys, hope all of you are well. Now, the one thing that I'm learning in all of this process, apart from being slightly more technologically savvy than I used to be, and by that just basically mean recording and then uploading the video. So, how some of you know how difficult and challenging that was for me. But one thing that I am learning, and I don't think it makes me a bad teacher to have been following that in the past, because you know how I get excited and I want to show you the bigger picture, and then I bring you back and then I throw you from market to market and I say okay fine, money market में ये होगा, उधर taxation में ये होता है, लेकिन we'll come back to that. And then eventually most of you, not you right now, you must be thinking where are we right now, but most of my students do come back and do say, and there is a little exercise, I'm not going to give it away as yet, it's a really fun exercise. Some of you have done that with me in 2 to 5 earlier, and where we, you know, where everything is consolidated and it all starts to make sense right before it all sort of, you know, I give you the grade. So today's thing is going to be, again, consolidate what we know and go forward into another market, jump into another market. I think one thing I've made very clear in my lectures with you is that I am keen with you to be able to understand what makes the, you know, the boom slump, boom slump, boom slump, the natural bipolarness of the economic cycle, to let's figure out ways to taper it. And when we figure out ways to taper it, we start to understand what makes what tick. ठीक है? तो इसमें if you go back again in lectures, we've talked about this, that you know aggregate demand, aggregate supply, and aggregate demand and aggregate supply will therefore you need to figure out कि अच्छा aggregate demand कहाँ से आती है और aggregate supply में क्या क्या चीज़ है. Let's talk about aggregate supply for a bit so that we can put it aside, because aggregate supply एक ऐसा curve है जिस पे by the way today we won't discuss your work that you've done on schools of thought, but aggregate demand एक ऐसी चीज़ है जिसमें what did I say? No, aggregate supply एक ऐसी चीज़ है जिसमें सबसे ज़्यादा schools of thought की भी contention. You know, they're also kind of not able to figure out or not able to sort of decide what it is that they want in terms of the assumptions that are underlying. So some say, okay, there's a lot of capacity in the market, and आपका aggregate supply curve, अब मैं बता नहीं रही कौन कहता है ये, because वो एक another lecture. So you know, somebody is saying aggregate supply is like this, and somebody is saying no, it's completely vertical, and no, somebody is saying it's expectations augmented, therefore it's going to be slightly sort of so there'll be an inherent stickiness in the aggregate supply. Why is there a contention? Because aggregate supply आता कहाँ से? Aggregate supply is production, aggregate supply is attitudes, aggregate supply is productivity. It's a certain efficiency that is not very automatic, by the way. It's not very inertial. It's something I think which has to be acquired. जैसे हमने savings की बात की थी, इसी तरह productivity, efficiency, ये सारी वो वाली variables हैं जिनको acquire करना पड़ता है, जिनको थोड़ा सा unlearn करना पड़ता है अपनी पुरानी habits को to get to. So aggregate supply, sorry, is sticky. It's not to be able to shift it out. And why are we talking about shifts right now is because we're talking about, see, if this is the business cycle, boom slump, boom slump, boom slump, if you've been attending classes, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Then you have to, अगर boom में जा रहा है तो उसको थोड़ा सा ऊपर से लेके नीचे आना है, therefore थोड़ी contractionary policies, और अगर slump पे जा रहा है तो उसको थोड़ा सा. Now I know I sound very Keynesian when I'm talking like this, but that's what a parent is, that's what a government is, that's what a, you know, right now what can a government do? A government can instill confidence within you that everything will be fine, and we'll come back to you know, how things are going to unravel once in the post-COVID world also. So but for today let's stick to theory. So you see aggregate supply curve के पीछे एक पूरी एक ऐसी साइंस है जो इस कोर्स का नंबर वन ना तो स्कोप है, नंबर टू आई डू बिलीव दैट इट्स ऑल्सो गोइंग टू बी समथिंग विच इज़ going to lead you to more sort of understanding of the sociology of the, you know, assumptions that we have, and the sort of and I think the more work there is happening in economics, the more you're understanding that it is different. So you know, you've done why nations, some of you've done why nations fail, so उधर उन्होंने institutions की बात की. So aggregate supply के पीछे इतने factors हैं that for now I think this is enough on it, and therefore in order to taper the business cycle, let's focus on the one thing we have control on, and that is the aggregate demand side of things. ठीक है? Acha, before we move on to aggregate demand, I do want to talk about something which governs, which is something which is a major part of macroeconomic study, and which is, by the way, very mainstream. इसमें कोई मैं आपको heterodox अभी elements नहीं ला रही हूँ. Of course, clearly how you move forward once you know this little bit of information that I'm going to give to you, I think for me it changed my entire perspective on how policies work. Therefore, I introduced to you the concept of, some of you have heard this before, some of you have not, but it's very, very simple. It's all given very nicely, theoretically, in ManQ or any other decent macroeconomics textbook. It's the concept of what we mean to be expectations. Macroeconomics में हम दो main expectations की बात करते हैं, mainstream के अंदर, which is rational expectations and adaptive expectations. What is rational expectations? Rational expectations, as the word implies, must come from a version of what we consider to be rational, which is that, economic agents, which is you, me, all of us. Isa here is an economic agent. I used to, some of you know this, but I used to struggle with trying to get Muhammad to switch away from a particular brand of formula milk, and he just wasn't, because of his taste and his affinity towards it, and we tried everything, but it didn't work. Therefore, he is an economic agent because he's making that decision that this is a demand that is very inelastic in our household for this particular project. But recently I tried to switch Isa away from that formula also, but fine, the taste aspect was there, but his whole body didn't accept the change, so his tummy didn't sit very well with that choice. Therefore, they're both economic agents. Economic agents are not something that is anybody who is deciding actively that this is what we want to be buying in the market right now would be falling in the category of economic agents. Rational expectations, how you look at a certain say policy, or a certain action by the government, or a certain set of outcomes, a price change, or a quantity a quantity war between अगर इतना हम sophisticated होना चाहते, but any occurrence that we think is going to be changing dynamics for us. So we look at that, and we look at the set of information, the little snippets of information that we have. Number one, try to gather as much information as we can. So जिस तरह आपने अपना indifference curve का पूरा analysis किया था, उसी तरह you try to make your decisions based on what information you have, what your constraints are, what your attitudes are, what your tastes are, what your limiting factors are. So budget line है तो budget line है, कोई certain other constraints है तो constraints है, and therefore you make a particular decision. This is what we refer to, and of course a better definition is given in the book, and you're very welcome to know. You have to go and read the definition in the book. So go and read the definition in the book and see whether what I'm trying to say is making sense with what we've been talking about all along. Now here's the rub. While policymakers, when they give you a policy, when they give you a medication, when they are assuming that people will behave according to a concept called rational expectations, there's another set of expectations, or there's another concept in the market, which is adaptive expectations. Adaptive expectations का मतलब है कि हम एक certain baggage कहें आप उसको, एक certain nuance, एक certain bias. Now these all sound sort of negative also, but they can have positive connotations also. But clearly, whenever we're responding to any policy change, or whenever we're responding to something new coming up, so if your parents today decide, all right guys, if you behave very well, there'll be pizza for dinner. So you're not going to take them at face value. You're going to look at the past behavior. अच्छा कितनी दफ़ा इन्होंने ये बात को जो है ना, how many times have they actually delivered on this process? So all of that, the baggage of expectations. So one of you might turn around and say, नहीं यार देखो, let's look at it. Let's clean up. Let's do the jhadu pocha and all of that. By the way, I hope you guys are helping out. Last time I talked about helping out. Please help out. Like physically get up, make your beds, all of the things that if you weren't doing them before, please do them. And as a family, if you can volunteer, this is a particular task I will be undertaking. I'll be kind of taking care of. Acha. So adaptive expectations, बड़ी नॉर्मल सी चीज़ है फॉर मोस्ट ऑफ अस. वी एक्चुअली वी आर वेरी यूज टू अडेप्टिव एक्सपेक्टेशंस, क्योंकि हाँ ये तो कभी भी नहीं होगा, ऐसे तो कभी भी नहीं होता, ऐसे हमेशा होता है. सो वेन एवर यू अटैच दैट हमेशा और कभी भी नहीं या ऑलवेज और नेवर और इट हैजंट हैपन बिफोर और ऑल ऑफ दीज कॉनोटेशंस विद समथिंग, देयरफॉर दैट मीन्स दैट व्हाटएवर डिसीजन यू विल बी मेकिंग पोस्ट ante will actually end up being something that the policymaker was not hoping would be the case. Does that make sense? Unless the policymaker is as clever as I am, and I already anticipate कि नहीं, okay, these guys are gonna know that, so they're going to behave like that. So then I'm playing sort of like a, I don't play chess, but that's as far as I can go. So nay, so do you understand the difference? It's so beautifully sort of it just distinguishes how a policy will never work, because again, let's bring my nani in. She was very averse to the concept of modern medicine, and ironically my mamu, who she spent most of her life with, one of my mamus, he was one of her younger children. She had 7 children, so he was one of her younger children, so clearly she had very little sort of regard for whatever scientific discovery was being made for, especially if he was the messenger. So we used to feel bad for Tamim Mama also, because I mean, it was like he's a big shot doctor in the world, and he's attending conferences all over the world, and he's at the breakthrough of radiology, और बहुत ही अच्छे बड़े मज़े के डायनामिक किस्म के वो डॉक्टर हैं. लेकिन घर में जब वो आते हैं तो whatever medicine or whatever recommendation he would like to give to his mother for her to feel better, she'd just dismiss. ओहो तुम्हें तो कुछ नहीं पता. So do you realize how interesting this is? तुम्हें तो कुछ नहीं पता would mean that whatever there were times. Now I'm so glad that Tamim Mama was able to figure out that because of this के तुम्हें तो कुछ नहीं पता, and she wouldn't therefore take the medicine, and then therefore of course if you don't take the first dose, then, and this, please understand that I'm right now talking about policy also. We're not just going to be discussing, this is, you've got to be able to make the the analogy has to move beyond. तो अगर फर्स्ट वेव ऑफ आपको एक पॉलिसीज़ दी है और अगर आपने वही नहीं फॉलो किया, तो सेकेंड वेव ऑफ पॉलिसीज़ जो कि बेस्ड था ऑन द सक्सेस ऑफ द फर्स्ट, और नॉट इवन जस्ट द सक्सेस, ऑन द फैक्ट दैट दे विल बी अडॉप्टेड एंड अडेप्टेड, वो हुआ ही नहीं है. तो हाउ विल द सेकेंड वेव वर्क? इन फैक्ट in economics we call it perverse results. Perverse is an English word, and it basically means bad. I mean stinky, ganda. So if you can just imagine how insane my mama would get, because she wouldn't take the medicine, and then of course the second wave of medicine or whatever, say if she had to have a surgery, she had to make sure that the पहले हफ्ते में ये हो रहा है वो उन्होंने किया ही नहीं है. So how is it that anything that any sort of bigger measures that are taken later on, how will they have any impact on the underlying assumptions or the reality or whatever you're trying to change? So what he did was he preempted this, and he would then of course get more respectable friends of his and doctors or people that my nani respected, and get them to speak to her about what the course of treatment should be, as opposed to, so he was I think sensible about it, rather than letting his ego get in the way. But the fact that he was able to also correctly identify, I mean, it would bother him a lot, as it would, I'm sure there are a lot of you who are constantly looking for validation from your parents. Hands up, who are all those? So it would really bother him, but I think he was very sensible in putting his ego aside and understanding that she's almost always going to work on adaptive expectations. In fact, so much so that जब वो कभी उनकी बात मान लेती थी, so he would be very surprised कि खैरियत है, हुआ क्या है, something else is up. ठीक है? So guys, I'm going to stop here and come back to the video, because I think it's easier to upload in small snippets. So the end of this video is adaptive expectations, rational expectations. ठीक है? For those of you who are just joining us, बड़ा मज़ा आया होगा, उन्होंने कहा होगा okay fine, this is as much as I need to take home. I'll be back.